Next up is a team that also had a really tough 2024. Georgia didn't have a tough last year, but they could have a tough 2025. Kentucky had a rough one in 2024. That's what we're talking about next. They did have an upset over 6th-ranked Ole Miss. It was their highlight of the season, but it was really a year to forget for Kentucky. Only a 4-8 record last year, snapping a 3-year streak with at least a winning record, and it was their worst record in the last 11 years. Brock Vandagriff, formerly from Georgia, did not live up to the hype he had coming out of high school as a 5-star recruit. Only had the 100th best passing grade in the country at 66.7, and Kentucky was only 110th in EPA per pass. Now, the Wildcats did really improve that offensive line, but there are still serious concerns with their passing game as they welcome in yet another transfer at quarterback and Zach Calzada, who we'll talk about in just a second. The defense did lose some key pieces, but it should be at least an average unit once again in 2025. But Don, I mentioned before, that offensive line, which really struggled in 2024, they did a really good job of addressing in the portal.
Yeah, they did, and it should be better this year. Jagger Burton obviously was hurt last year, played less than 400 snaps. You got, your number 11 interior offensive lineman in the country, and Josh Braun from Arkansas. So you're talking about a few new transfers in there, 2 returning starters to go with it, and you at least have the foundation, because we know with Kentucky, look, they want to run the football first and foremost. They're a physical team. Mark Stoops prides himself on being the more physical team. So if you can start that with an improved offensive line from what they had last year that was a bottom 30 unit, then you start to build everything around Calzada coming up from Incarnate Word and try to figure out things in the run game and outside with those weapons. But the offensive line is so often the key to your offense, and at least Kentucky has that working for them. Hopefully, we should say hopefully, with 3 new transfers and better health up front.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were 111th in offensive line grade last year. They should be a lot better with all the transfers they brought in this year. Problem is, though, it doesn't matter if you have a great offensive line if you just can't do anything in the passing game. Really, the question mark for Kentucky is, will they have any semblance of a passing game next year? Their new quarterback is Zach Calzada, we'll talk about in just a second, only a 71.5 passing grade last year at Incarnate Word, which is an FCS school. The Wildcats also lost their 2 star receivers to the transfer portal in Dane Key and Barryon Brown. So your top 2 receivers, who are both really good players, are gone. And now you have a brand new quarterback in Zach Calzada, who, Dawn, kind of had some issues at the FCS level last year.
So it's up and down. So when you watch his tape, he goes down to Incarnate Word, and it reminds you a little bit of back in the days of Cam Ward and Incarnate Word, and they just like their gunslingers down there. So essentially he went down there and he said, hey, let me just lay it on the line and see what happens. So he was in the top 7 in the FCS last year in yards, touchdowns, and big-time throws. But there was some turnover-worthy plays that came along with that. He's just taking his chances with a lot of deep shots in tight windows down the field. Some of them work, some don't. In the end, it was a good season for him because it got him back into the SEC. And we remember that big upset. Was it 2021? He had the big upset over number 1 Alabama for Texas A&M. So I don't think he'll be rattled by SEC environments, but what he does have is a really good arm that he likes to take a lot of deep shots with, right? 14 deep touchdowns last year, over 20 air yards, second most in the FCS. So you can do that at that level. It's just, can you do it at the SEC level where the defenses are a lot better? And with a receiving core that lost their top 2 receivers, Dane Key and Barryon Brown, to the transfer portal, right? So maybe those deep shots won't be as accessible. If he can get to them, then great. The question then is, what else is he able to give you? Because last year at the FCS level at Incarnate Word, he was able to improvise. But they say around here that at the 2.5-second mark and beyond, quarterback play gets unstable. That's the thing for Calzada, is once he started to improvise last year, 22 big-time throws beyond 2.5 seconds, but also 11 turnover-worthy plays. So when I tell you he went down there and he said, kind of like Kyle McCord did for you at Syracuse last year, he went down there and said, you know what, I'm going to let it rip.
Yeah.
And he let it rip, and the grade is what it is because it was very high variance. It could be one play, could be spectacular, 60-yard bomb. The next one is, what the hell are you doing? That's what you got from Calzada and Incarnate Word. It turned out to work for him, but that style of play on the SEC doesn't always play. So he's going to have to be a little cleaner with the football and take maybe a few less chances against the schedule that Kentucky's going to face.
And to be fair to him, yes, the grade this past year wasn't great. The year before at Incarnate Word, 87.8 passing grade. And actually 2 years earlier at A&M in 2021, he had an 80.8 grade at A&M that year.
He's talented. He's got a really good arm. He's like 60. He can get up to about 60 yards in pads with his range. He's got a really good arm. You just have to reel in the ball security.
Yes.
That's what it is. If you can mean, I know that's the hardest thing to do is throw the ball downfield and be safe with the football. But if you can reel that part in, especially in the SEC where you just cannot turn the football over, it'll kill you. Then you talk about having success with him as your quarterback. So he could start for them. He could have a good season. That's what I'm looking at is, can you control the home run ball a little bit more? Can you throw it underneath just a little bit better and just kind of keep us with the chains, and then we can find your home run shots?
Well, one guy you should help out a lot, too, is their new offensive guard in Joshua Braun, transferring in from Arkansas, in my opinion, a top 10 guard in college football right now. He played at Florida and at Arkansas, now plays for his third SEC school in his sixth season of college football. He was excellent as a pass blocker for Arkansas last year, 10th among all guards in the Power 4 with an 85.9 pass blocking grade. And his 71.5 run blocking grade was also a top 25 mark in the Power 4. And according to our wins above average metric, he was one of the 20 most valuable guards in the nation. So really, Joshua Braun, a great player, is the star offensive player, I think, now for Kentucky. And like I said before, was a fantastic addition by Mark Stoops in the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, yeah, you can't have the 111th ranked offensive line in the country if you're playing in the SEC.
No.
You just can't do it. I mean, I know even we're going to talk about another team later that had one even lower than that and found a way to make a bowl game, but you won't do much more. So he did the right thing going and fixing the offensive line. They lost a couple weapons. They brought in a couple different ones in, say, Kendrick Law, right, or a J.J. Hester.
Yep.
They have Jamori Macklin. I think what you're talking about here is setting up Calzada to succeed. They've done it, especially on the offensive line. They've done a nice job of that.
Absolutely. So, Dawn, a guy who's going to go up against a lot in practice is a guy we're going to spotlight here on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, defensive tackle David Gusta, another transfer from Washington State. Going back and watching his tape again was fun. He's twitchy, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's got this 290 pounds. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he's twitchy. I really like his first step. I believe he only had one sack last year that he had, but he created a lot of pressure. He's just a guy who just shoots gaps. He's strong. He plays with a wide base. He can even take on double teams with the leverage that he has, and he plays with his feet a little bit wide to keep that base about him. So I think this is somebody, look, Kentucky's had a lot of good defensive linemen going to the NFL lately. Gusta could be another one. A really good year last year at Washington State. If he can bring that up to the SEC level, then you're talking about, I think, another NFL prospect. But he's got that fun, penetrating, fast twitch kind of three technique thing about him. I really liked watching him both in the run and the pass game.
Yeah, not as massive as Deion Walker was, who's now playing for the Buffalo Bills.
A little bit different, yeah.
Yeah, but he's a great player, man. He had the 11th best grade among all D tackles in the country last year with an 84.4 grade, 84.8 pass rush grade. It was tied for 6th among all D tackles in the country. I'm with you, Dawn. When I was watching him, David Gusta flashed on tape for Washington State. I'm excited to see what he could do at Kentucky next year. All right, bottom line time now for the Wildcats. Their win total is 4.5 right now. So even after, a 3-year streak of winning seasons, the sports books right now, Dawn, are pretty low on Kentucky after a 4-8 record last year. What do you think is the bottom line here, and are you taking the over or under for that 4.5 win total?
I think I'm taking the under.
Yeah.
The loss of Barryon Brown and Dane Key at receiver, and I know again they have Jamori Macklin, they got Kendrick Law in from Alabama, which helps with the speed and the deep threat with Calzada. But Calzada coming back up from the FCS. Kentucky's playing a brutal schedule. They were already struggling last year, winning only 4 games last year. I know that maybe the quarterback situation is more stable, gives them a chance to do more than that. They're always a physical team that brings it in the trenches, but I'm worried about the receiving core and the lack of depth and weaponry out there. And then, it's a brutal schedule. It's one of the hardest SEC schedules. Plus, they have to go to Louisville out of conference. I mean, it's just, even a team like Toledo, who beat Mississippi State last year, that's not an easy out of conference. That's one of the harder G5 games you're going to get. So I'm going to take under the 4.5. They won 4 games last year. I think it's just going to be tough because almost every SEC game here looks like it would have to be an upset for them to win.
I agree with that. I'm taking the under as well. I think Zach Calzada performs like he did last year. Kentucky will probably fail to make a bowl game. If we see a 2023 Zach Calzada or a 2021 Zach Calzada, if he performs at that level, Kentucky can surprise a lot of people and make a bowl game next year and kind of cool off that hot seat talk from Mark Stoops. But I look at that schedule right now. It's the 6th hardest in the country according to our power rankings. One of their out-of-conference games is Louisville. All the SEC games are brutal for them, too. They really don't have much of they don't really play any other SEC teams that are even close to their level, like maybe a Mississippi State or something like that. They play a lot of really good SEC teams. I think it could be like a 3-9 type of year for Kentucky, unfortunately. And I think pretty well under that 4.5 win total right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just tough because yes, they got better on the O-line. but they went 4-8 last year, and I don't know this is anywhere I can look at them and go, they got significantly better from that 4-8 team, right? Obviously, we said the same thing about Arkansas last year, and then Talon Green was a way better quarterback than they had the previous year. So you never know, especially when you're changing at quarterback. But right now, I do think it's going to be another tough season in Lexington.
At least 2 upsets are probably required to go above 4.5, which I don't know if I'm predicting that for Kentucky right now. So yeah, unfortunately for the Wildcats, probably go under this year. We'll see what happens with Mark Stoops after that. If he does have another 3-9, 4-8 type of year.